Primordial Radio.
It's Adam here on Primordial Radio, and it's the month of June, new month, new radio residency guest, and we have got a good one for you this month. Sitting virtually across from me, we have got Morgan Lander from the band Kittie. How are you today?
I'm so good. Thank you so much for having me. This is awesome.
It's brilliant to have you here. Let's play a track from your forthcoming album. It's out in a couple of weeks' time, called Fire. People will be able to pick it up from Sumerian Records and anywhere where you can get good music. But we're going to play a new track from it. This is Kittie with Eyes Wide Open. So that was Kittie with Eyes Wide Open. Morgan, tell me a bit about that track. Well, actually, no. Let's go back a little bit. It's been, how many years? 13 years since your last album. Wow. Firstly, why so long? Secondly, how is it to have new music on its way out?
Oh, I mean, it's an unbelievable feeling. I can't say it was really in the plan to make new music. You know, even just as of a few years ago, we were still very much like not in that mode. I think Kittie sort of stepped away, I guess, from making new music when we came off the road in 2012. And it wasn't really like a conscious decision. Like, we didn't sit down and have a conversation like, hey, let's all go our separate ways, or we're breaking up, or anything like that. It was just a case of, I don't know. I think our morale was pretty low. We were touring a lot with not a lot of reward, and I think it was time to try new things. So we did sort of step away, and we're sort of focusing on a few more legacy projects in the last decade. We put out the documentary, Origins Evolutions, in 2018, I believe. And we're just sort of content to do those types of things. We got some offers a couple of years ago to play some pretty big festivals in the US, the When We Were Young festival, and Sick New World as well. And that was the thing that started the Kittie ball rolling again. You know, they were really incredible offers. They were like, we want to see you reunite as a band and play your first shows in a really long time. And we were like, that sounds great. And from there, we ran into Ash from Sumerian Records, who we've known for a very long time, who was like, I saw your show, and I think that I would love to put out new Kittie music. And our answer to that was, well, we don't have any new material, so you're going to have to wait. And so, yeah, like the last, I guess, really year and a half has been focusing on writing new music, getting reacquainted with each other, and back in the swing of things. And last fall, we recorded the album in Nashville, Tennessee with Nick Rasculinex, and Fire will be out June 21st. Like, it's been a wild couple of years, let me tell you. One thing after another, and one amazing opportunity after another that we really weren't expecting. But when opportunity presents itself in such a way, it's sort of like, why not, right? Why not take the risk and see what happens? And so here we are.
That's wow, what a few years. I want to bring it actually to working with you said his surname, which I've never been able to pronounce. Nick Rasculinex. Is that it?
Yeah.
Have I got it?
Yeah, as far as I know, he's never corrected me. So I might get a mean text message after this is out, but you said it wrong.
What a producer to work with. I'm a big fan of his work, especially some of the sounds that he's got from some of the new Foo Fighters is stuff that I absolutely just adore. You know, I've been led to Nick through artists like the Foo Fighters. Your album sounds much heavier. It's thick. It sounds fantastic. It just sounds so full on as well. Like, I'm in love with the guitar tones, and we spoke just before we hit the red button. You've got some very, very tasty guitar amps behind you. Like, how was it to get into a studio and to start hearing that come together again? You know, such a big, just ballsy sounding album. Oh, it's fantastic.
Well, yeah, I mean, working with Nick was already a dream in itself. Like, and it really was something that we didn't think was going to be in the cards. You know, early on in the process of like finding the right producer and where you're going to record and things like that, you know, there were a lot of different names thrown out. early on, his name was one of the names that we sort of threw in the hat. But, you know, looking at his resume, we were like, that guy would never want to work with us. Like, he's just like in the stratosphere. He's so huge. You know, he works with bands like Alice in Chains and the Deftones and Korn and stuff like that. And we were like, wow, like a guy like that would probably never want to work with Kittie, especially, you know, coming back and not really, you know, proven ourselves yet. And so his name was thrown out, but we didn't actually approach him. And as the process went on and we just kind of felt like we weren't finding the right person, we were like, why not? Let's just ask and approach him, you know, and the right people and see. And the first thing that, you know, he wants to know, or he asks, is, you know, can I hear some demos? I want to know what I'm working with. And, you know, Nick is he's a very straightforward guy. If he doesn't like something, he would immediately pass. And funny enough, we sent him all the demos that we had at that time, and I believe the first thing that he heard was the opening riff of Eyes Wide Open. And apparently he had said that he heard the riff and he was like, yep, okay, yep, I'm gonna do this. Yeah, he heard the first bit and he was like very, very into it, which I mean, it's a complete honor to hear that from him. You know, he loved what he heard, and I mean, he gets approached a lot. He's a very in-demand guy, and the fact that he wanted to work with us was incredible. And so that just started stuff. You know, we sent him all the demos and we got to work on what songs were going to be recorded, because we did demo more than was actually put down on the album. And yeah, going into the studio with him was amazing. He's so enthusiastic about music. You know, he has done a lot of metal and rock, and like, I mean, there's like some of those Deftones albums that he recorded are, I think, some of the like tone wise, like some of the heaviest that they've done. And so we knew what we were sort of getting into. He's through and through like a hard rock and heavy metal guy, and he knows the right sound for the band, and he really got our vibe and like what we were sort of going for and who we are as a band as well. Like, I mean, we're not a very overproduced, you know, track heavy band or anything like that. It's like a lot of what we write, we want to be able to perform exactly live, and it sounds like a 4-piece band. And, you know, he is very much into being able to capture that raw sound, but just elevating it with like modern sounds and modern tones and stuff. And so it was sort of bringing Kittie into the modern metal era.
Yeah, it's definitely got that energy as well that you'd expect from sort of a 4-piece metal band. But as it is on the radio residency, it isn't, you know, we've got lots and lots of Kittie tracks to play, old and new, coming up on the next 4 weeks. But you picked some of your own tracks. Very excited to hear some of your picks and some of the reasons why. Kicking off with this from Crowbar, Planets Collide, your first track. Why have you gone for this one?
Oh gosh, this is like one of the best songs I think that's ever been written. That whole album is incredible. I think like the tones are great, and the songwriting is incredible. I know it sounds silly, but like, you know, I like vacuum the house and like sing that song. It's so catchy. I think I've seen Crowbar live, and they're incredible live. They're just one of those bands that just keep slugging it out, and they make great music. But Planets Collide, I think, is one of my favorite songs. It's like a heavy metal ballad, and I know it's like a kind of a sadder song about addiction and stuff like that. But it's like, it just really truly is one of my favorite songs, and I think, like I said, it's like one of the best songs ever written. Yeah, people will debate me. That's fine. Like, to me, there's just something about the delivery of Kirk's vocals and the lyrics and everything, that it's a beautiful, beautiful song.
You know, now we started off with one of the best songs ever written. So hoping that doesn't mean it's all downhill from here, but I'm looking at the track list. It's not at all. Let's have a listen now. This is Crowbar with Planets Collide. That was Amorphis, You I Need, here on the radio residency with Morgan from the band Kittie. Amorphis, You I Need. Why that track?
Well, when I was trying to go through some ideas of songs that I wanted to sort of showcase, like, there's a lot of stuff, you know, like with Amorphis, also a couple of the Katatonia tracks, that will be coming up as well, that sort of remind me of a certain time in my life. And I know that when there's like, emotional connection to the songs that you're listening to when you're going through a certain period of time in your life, that those always stick with you. And for me, I feel like I'm a little bit of a nostalgic person in terms of that. And, you know, there are songs like that where I was going through really difficult times in my life, and I turned to those songs. And like that Amorphis song and that album in general are just they're just really meaningful to me. And when I listen to them now, it's nice to be able to go back and sort of like reflect on that time in your life and remember why you love those songs so much. And I mean, like, they're also incredible. I don't know what it is. The Finns are amazing. Like, they're just they just write great songs. You know what I'm saying? So, and they kind of, I like the vibe in general of them. They sort of bridge the gap between like metal and hard rock with like big catchy choruses as well. So I love it.
Always in the big catchy chorus.
Yes.
I struggle to listen to stuff if it was from a tough time, because I get very nostalgic with music, and I feel that it, you know, it's funny actually. You said about before, you know, you've been for a run before this, and for me, that's one of the reasons why I love running, is listening to music, because you know, in working world and everything, it's sort of the best time for it when you can just be alone with your music. And it's amazing when something nostalgic comes on that reminds me of a time, you know, when I was happy. I will notably run quicker, and you can see it in the stats. You know, it's that powerful, and I find it still has the same effect the other way if it is something from a tougher time. Yeah, which is always difficult, but the power of music is fantastic, and I love that about it.
Absolutely.
And you mentioned as well Katatonia. Forsaker is the track we've got up next. So similar to Amorphis, I guess. Was it a similar sort of period of your life? Similar emotions?
Yeah. Like, I know that those the album that Forsaker's on is like I think it came out a little bit later than that Amorphis album, but again, it was just like me discovering this music that had this like beautiful emotional connection. And like Katatonia is so good at making these like, they're like beautiful songs. I mean, there's a lot of stuff, like some of their newer stuff, like it's heavy, but it's hard to even define them as like a metal band. But yes, there's definitely like an emotional connection to the music. And during that period of time in my life, I would say, you know, around 2010, 2011, you know, sort of losing myself in those songs, and finding solace in the beauty of like the pain and the things that that song represents. And, you know, the album Night is a New Day in general, like just represents. So I love it.
Let's have a listen now. This is Katatonia and Forsaker. Katatonia and Forsaker here on Primordial Radio. And, well, we're going to Arch Enemy now. One of... still probably one of the heaviest bands out there. It does depend, doesn't it? Because you've got your sort of heavy stuff that's slow and sludgy and doomy. They're very, you know, speedy, thrashy. Tell us why you picked Sunset Over the Empire, which is just a brilliant track name as well.
Oh, I know, isn't it so great? I think everything that Arch Enemy does is incredible. I know Elisa, and she is a big Kittie supporter. Actually, we were texting the other day, and she was so excited for the new album. I just wanted to showcase them because they're an incredible band. They've been doing it for so long. I love this era of Arch Enemy with Elisa as a front woman. I think she's taken the band to new heights as far as her vocal abilities are concerned. I mean, Angela is in her own right like the foundation of the band, but I love that there are tracks on the new album that Elisa is singing on, because she has a beautiful singing voice, and they're sort of branching out in that way. But Sunset Over the Empire it's just an incredible song. That whole album, Deceivers, is great. Every song is a banger. And, you know, in going back to talking a little bit about running and stuff like that, when that album came out, that was definitely one of those albums that I would put on and just go. And, you know, every song is fast and upbeat and makes you, you know, feel like you want to be chanting while you're running. So I love it. So yeah, that's why I chose this.
Let's have a listen now. Arch Enemy, Sunset Over the Empire. Chelsea Wolfe with Sick. Before we talk about the track explicitly, you're from London. Obviously Chelsea, big borough London, but you're from London, Ontario.
Yeah, the less interesting London.
See, it isn't less interesting to me. I've never been to Canada, and I love the sound of the place just in general. I was planning to go there for a honeymoon, but then COVID and all of that happened, and then life happens after COVID, you know. What's the music scene like in Canada? Because I try and think of, you know, some of the bands who I know that are Canadian. Obviously Rush spring to mind as well, like of some of them. But, you know, obviously it's another huge country, similar to countries, I mean, I don't want to say similar, but a bit like Australia in the sense that, you know, big cities spread far, far apart. So it's quite difficult to kind of, you know, tour, I imagine. How is the music scene in Canada at the minute, would you say?
You know, I don't know. Canada's always been really interesting. I think, you know, during the 90s, like when I was sort of growing up and discovering music, we had a really, really thriving rock scene. And I think countries like, you know, Australia and Canada, you know, we have our own kind of thing going on. And there are a lot of bands that are pretty big in our country that nobody's ever heard of, like, and the border is like 2 hours away type thing. I think it's a really interesting phenomenon. But there's so many talented artists coming out of Canada, lots of rock and metal. I mean, I think a lot of times even people are surprised who's Canadian and who's not. You know, some people don't even realize that we are Canadian. I'm pretty sure like a band like Spiritbox, you know, like they have Canadian people in the band. They're Canadian. Like, it's just weird, you know, we just sort of infiltrate. But there's a lot of great talent, in the country in general. And it is very difficult to tour Canada. You can't just go across. A lot of it is sort of based in, like, if you go to the States, you sort of, you know, pop up to Canada and then you go back down and then you pop back up, because otherwise you're driving for like 48 hours across, you know, a plane. There's nothing, you know, Saskatchewan and Winnipeg, you know, all the Manitoba, all those provinces along the way. Like, it's very spread out. So not the easiest.
No, I can imagine. I mean, us here in Europe, we sort of neglect the fact of, you know, how small it is. I mean, I live in Poland, so I'm sort of northern Poland. Driving to, you know, the furthest corners of England to see my family, that's only 20 hours in a car, and that feels long. I wouldn't fancy the whole, you know, I wouldn't fancy 48 hours in any form of transport, if I'm really honest. But let's go back to Chelsea Wolfe and Sick. So why this track? That whole album, I know, like, I picked a lot of like older stuff. I love Chelsea Wolfe in general. I think she's so eclectic. She's so interesting. You know, she's done doom, she's done kind of folk, and she's always sort of maintained this like ethereal, witchy vibe to everything that she sings about, and it really resonates with me. But Pain is Beauty is the album that I discovered her on, and I think that there's just something really special about the elements of the songs in this album in particular that I don't think appear on any of her other albums. Like some later albums were more like sort of straightforward, like doom and stuff like that. But like there's a little bit of almost electronic kind of thing going on. And Sick is just this beautiful swelling song. There's so much, it feels like there's like so much pain in the song itself. And I love how it starts out and then it sort of kind of dies down and then ebbs and flows back into something else big and swelling. It almost like changes direction, but it's just, I don't know, it's just one of those songs that like I really feel. It's just really, really dark and feral. Dark and feral is a great description for any metal in my book.
Mm-hmm.
The word feral itself is just a brilliant word. When you sort of bring it into metal, it brings up, you know, so many vocalists that you think, yeah, actually they sound pretty feral. Anyway, we've come to the end of the show, first week of the radio residencies. Thank you very much for joining us. But before we let you go, we've got a Kittie track, and this is from back in 2011. So this is your last album. The album's I Failed You, and you've picked the track We Are the Lamb. So tell us a little bit about this one.
We Are the Lamb actually is a song that we usually play last during our more recent sets. I feel like whenever we play this song, I feel like I'm like, man, this is such a great song. Like, I love the structure of it. I'm like, this is good stuff. Like, we wrote a really great song. Whenever I listen to it, it was a single, so we got to release it. I don't know. I just think it's got a really, really great vibe, and really showcases, who Kittie has become. As a band, it's got it's pretty straightforward metal. There's a really awesome solo in it. I don't know. I feel like some of the changes in it feel a little Metallica to me, but there's nothing wrong with that. No, it's just one of my favorite tracks to play live. It always, wraps up a show really, really well with such a great vibe. And people just go wild for it. So that's why I've chosen it.
And final question before you go. Are you talking last or are you talking encore?
Oh, well, I mean, so here's the thing. We haven't done any headlining shows yet as of the recording of this. So it's all been festivals. So it's the last song that we play. But when we do headlining stuff, there will be the inclusion of some encore. So that's a big surprise.
Oh, we'll keep it as a surprise then. Don't want to give the game away. But thank you so much, Morgan, for joining us on the first week of the radio residencies for July here on Primordial Radio. And we'll see you again next week.
Thank you.
Adam here, it's Primordial Radio, and I'm delighted to be joined again by Morgan from the band Kittie. Hello, how are you?
Hello,
again?
I'm good. How are you?
Very, very well. Very excited for this show. We've got loads of great tracks, and we're kicking off with, an older Kittie track from Spit. So we're talking nearly a quarter of a century ago. This is shivers there. This is the title track, Spit. So, Morgan, that was Spit from, as we said, the album Spit. Now, I wanted to ask you this question in the last show, but I didn't want to get off on... It feels like it could have been a downer, because you guys went on and I think the term that's used online is indefinite hiatus, a few years ago. You kind of started in what was possibly the golden age of music, especially rock music, heavy music, CDs, people buying albums, a lot of merch. I imagine, there were less vultures in the touring world as well. And going back to Spit, and then maybe the differences between that and when you went on hiatus, was it those elements of the music industry that maybe set you back a bit, or just made you want to have a break?
I don't know. It's difficult. The industry was sort of in a weird flux position, sort of when we were doing those last tours and whatnot. It was sort of like the transition period between people buying CDs and people streaming music. And, there certainly are a lot of elements that went into it. But I think a lot of it was just, it was just personal, the industry is hard. Slugging it out on the road, not really feeling as supported as I think we probably could have been, by our former label. And, I thought at the time we were putting out some of the best music that we had written up to that point, with very little return. And it just it got tiring. It can be a really, really tough business, and expensive as well. If you're just out there in a van not making tons of money, it's one show after another, and it is physically and can be emotionally exhausting. So.
And when you started coming back and doing gigs, and you mentioned, you didn't know if you're going to be recording any music or anything like that, was it more about getting back to the kind of the fun of it, in the sense of, being on a stage with, literally family, friends, band members, and just, and just getting back to that? Was that more of what you were trying to do?
Yeah. I mean, I think ultimately, if it's not fun, then there's no point in doing it. And that's not to say that it wasn't ever fun before and we stopped because it stopped being fun, but like there were elements of that of touring back before we took our hiatus that were not very fun. And I think being able to step away from the situation and sort of reevaluate, and then given this opportunity, we were able to enjoy some of the fruits of our previous labors in a way that we'd never been able to experience before. And that aspect is fun. These are big festivals. We were just shocked at how many people were excited to see the band. And for me, those things are like, are back to basics fun stuff. Like getting together, reconnecting, playing all of these songs that we've played together hundreds of times before, and just sometimes just getting into a room together as musicians and friends and jamming and like just laughing and having a blast. Like that's at the very core of what a band should be. People that are enjoying themselves together and like making and creating together. Being creative together, I think, is one of the most fun and rewarding things that you can do in life, and being able to do it with like a great group of girls. Like that's it. We love to play live, and so that definitely was the main thing there.
So take us back to the year 2000. Could have been 1999. I don't know how long it took to record the album, but take us back to this track, Spit. Tell us a little bit about it. Why have you picked it for the residency?
Well, I think that Spit is, obviously it's like an iconic album opener. I think that first riff is just like, oh, what's to come, and I think it creates a bit of excitement. The whole album actually didn't take very long to record. I think we recorded the entirety of Spit in like 9 days or something, and it was like while we were still going to school and doing homework in between takes and things like that. Spit was actually one of the last songs that we had written before we had gone into the studio. It was like one of the more later Kittie of the early Kittie tracks, and I feel like it's just the aggression of the song is sort of like set the precedence for what was to come in future years and things like that. It really feels to me, I think it has a little bit more of a different feel than a lot of the songs on the album, and I think that that's probably why. It's really pissed.
I always like to go and look at Spotify and see like streaming numbers of this, because Spit has got a fair few streams. I think it's safe to say 15 million, and that means people are still listening to still apparently, well, not apparently, there's nearly 1 million monthly listeners listening to Kittie, still listening to Spit, still listening to everything, which must be, I guess, for a band, one of the nicer things to see from Spotify. You have no idea how many people are still spinning those CDs, because you sold millions of those, but it's always good to see. Let's move on though, because it's the radio residency and you've picked loads of bands. I mentioned that I was trying to rack my brains to find some Canadian bands in the last show. I have a bad memory, if I'm really, really honest. But the next one is a band who I haven't found, I haven't heard before, but having a quick Google, they're from Vancouver. Econoline Crush. Am I saying that right? It's not. I don't know where to enunciate there. Econoline Crush.
Yeah,
tell us about these guys.
That sounds right. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, so, we were talking in the last episode about Canadians and the Canadian scene and stuff like that. And, like, Econoline Crush was one of those 90s, there was, like, a group of bands from Canada that were big and, like, did all these big festivals and played a lot of shows. And they were just, like, Canadian rock heroes. And Econoline Crush was sort of different. They had a little bit of a more industrial feel to them, which we really loved. And, being teenagers and watching Much Music, which is the Canadian equivalent of MTV, getting to consume all these videos and stuff like that and seeing all the Canadian content, like we thought these guys were rock stars. And the ideas that they had in that the songs, this song in particular is just like such a vibe, but like that whole album it's got like a little bit of the industrial thing, and it kind of was the reason why we wanted to put a cool track in Brackish. I know that sounds insane. But I think maybe I've talked about it a little bit before, but just that really cool industrial sort of thing that they had going on. We were like, that is so cool. Like, why don't we give it a whirl? And I mean, Brackish is literally the only Kittie song that has anything else other than just guitars, bass, vocals, and drums. It has like a little DJ track underneath that kind of gives it this really interesting thing. And I like to blame it on Econoline Crush. They're a really great band, and I know that they're still doing stuff. So shout out. Woo!
Let's check them out now. This is Surefire. That was Lacuna Coil, Heaven's a Lie. It's been years since I've heard Lacuna Coil. I don't know why. We do play them quite a lot on Primordial, but I just haven't picked up a CD of theirs and had a listen for ages. Are they still in your heavy rotation? Obviously, big fan, seeing as you put them in the radio residency. And tell us a little bit about Heaven's a Lie.
Yeah, well, actually, we played with Lacuna Coil at the Sonic Temple Festival just a couple weeks ago. And it was the first time that I had actually met Christina. Of all of the touring that we've done over the last couple of decades, we've never crossed paths. And she was always somebody that I really wanted to meet. I admire her as a front woman. She's like, her voice is just incredible. But I decided to choose Heaven's a Lie. The track that I'm choosing is the re-recorded version of Heaven's a Lie from their Comalize re-recorded album, which I find endlessly fascinating. I know that in its own right, Comalize it's a classic album. I know there's probably a lot of people that would argue that it didn't need to be re-recorded, but I think there's something so interesting about a band that has such a long career that they can look back and see some of the things that they maybe would have changed, knowing all of the things that they know now about music, and then go back and then sort of redo them. And I love the re-recording of that album. I think like sonically it sounds great. I love how they took some of the melodies that maybe sort of weren't working and sort of changed them. Like, isn't it interesting and wonderful that you can go back and like just reevaluate everything, and you get to redo it over and celebrate. And I know a lot of bands do that, and it's a big sort of debatable thing. Some people are purists, and they just, if the recording is the way that it is, it sounds a certain way, and that's sort of the charm of the song. But I think as artists, sometimes it's beneficial to be able to, like, maybe, you re-record something and you're just a better musician in general, or you've been playing the song for 20-something years and you want to be able to sort of bring it into the modern era. Some people they say it's being T-Swift it, where, they just maybe don't own the rights to those songs, and getting the opportunity to record them again will help them to, make some money on a song that they've never made money on. And I love the idea. I think this version of Heaven's Lie is better than the original. Some people might want to fight me, but I think it's beautiful, and I love the idea, and it is inspiring to me as well.
But I guess as well as an artist, studio time is dear. It's not cheap to come by. And, I remember listening to a podcast, I think, or an interview, maybe not a podcast, maybe it's old-fashioned reading, with Dave Windorf from Monster Magnet, and saying that, when Power Trip was successful, they were being under huge pressure to ride that wave and, do the next album, God Says No. And it didn't go well. They didn't like it. They didn't really, feel that many of the songs were great, but they were just being pushed, and they didn't have the time to go through the correct creative process. So I quite like the idea of going and re-recording it. And the thing is as well, anyone who says, I preferred the original, that's fine. I'm sure you still have the original.
It's there. You can still listen to
anything.
It. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I really like the idea of that, and I personally think we're going to see a lot more bands do that, because as well, music sales, or at least streaming, it's quite difficult now. People love familiarity. It's why we're seeing so many remakes of movies, and we're seeing, older albums and the growth of Spotify, you know, you can go back and listen to everything. You don't have to wait for something new. You can go and just dig in and find more. And if it's something that people are searching for, hey, they'll listen twice. I'd go back and listen to some of my favorite albums back to back and compare them intrinsically. Let's move on though to the next track, Far and Berry White. Tell me a little bit about this.
Oh, Far. They're like one of my favorite bands. They were like a 90s. They came up, I guess, sort of like around the same time as the Deftones from that area. I know that they were all friends and came from that same scene. But they never really got, I think, the recognition. They never got really that far, but like I know that a lot of people that know the band, they are widely influential on a lot of different musicians. I think that there's just such a magical rawness to Jonah's vocals, and again, that album, Water and Solutions, is like, in general, like it's a whole vibe of like a time of my life, like the late 90s and early 2000s, you know, figuring out everything in life, you know, being a young person, you know, starting the band. I remember I actually have like a little anecdote. We were at an airport. This was like early in the year 2000. We were first touring for Spit, and I don't remember where we were headed, but we were at an airport, and I had my like CD Walkman, and I had like a Far sticker on my Walkman, and I had like I had it on like in my hand and stuff, and we were going up an escalator, and I remember turning to one of the girls and being like, "Oh, I think that's Jonah from Far," and he heard me and he was like, "Oh, I am." And I was like, "That's so weird." And I like showed him the CD, my Walkman. That's how old that story is. But I don't know.
Was it
just
one
like
of the ones that didn't skip? You had to leave it like still for like the first 30 seconds of a track so it could buffer, so it didn't skip as you moved.
Yeah. You gotta like, oh gosh, technology, isn't it amazing?
Well, yeah.
Oh, so wild. But yeah, like just like it was such a weird little coincidence. And it was just like a fun little story. But yeah, like what a great band. There's so much power and emotion in all of those songs, and Berry White is it's just it's really powerful.
Let's have a listen now. This is Far with Berry White. That was Far with Berry White. It is the radio residency with Morgan from Kittie, here for the entire month of June. Very, very excited to have you with us. And next up, you've picked a perfect circle and 3 Libras. And I think this is probably the third, maybe the fourth radio residency in a row someone has picked a perfect circle.
Oh,
and
really?
they're on my list of bands that I've got to go and, you know, do a deep dive into. But I have never done it. So you need to tell me about this track and also give me the sell and ingrain it in my brain that I need to listen to a perfect circle.
All right. Well, I mean, first of all, Maynard, like the voice of a generation, like he's incredible. And he has one of those voices that I find I really connect with, because this feels like there's so much emotion going on. Like there's always a thing. It's like if you have like a certain emotional quality to your voice as a singer, it really draws me in. A Perfect Circle, 3 Libras. I chose this track from the album Mer de Nom, because that again is one of those albums that like solidifies like a time in my life. And I was listening to that album a lot on our very first European tour. You know, far away in a different land. Everything was so new and different. But you know, and experiencing all of this hoopla with Kittie through the eyes of like still a very young person. And there's so much sort of emotional tie with the whole album, just sort of in that for me. But like in general, all of the songs are incredible. You know, there's so much emotion and beauty. It's I can't really say that I've listened to like later, like their newest album. I think it came out in like 2018 or something, but this one album holds a real place in my heart. It's beautiful and vulnerable and magical, and it's just great.
I think you sold it. You've done a very good job there selling that to me. Let's have a listen now to this. This is 3 Libras. Cannibal Corpse and Bloodthirst. That's a slight change, isn't it? You know, I'm not like hugely knowledgeable on A Perfect Circle, but I do know enough that to Cannibal Corpse is a big change. Nice and heavy. Tell me about Cannibal Corpse.
Oh, I just wanted to throw something fun in there. You know, I can't say that like I'm the biggest Cannibal Corpse fan. I'm not like, you know, I own every album, but that album that Bloodthirst is on the production is incredible. I listen to that album often. Again, it's sort of like one of those albums that like reminds me of a time in my life, you know, early 2000s. But it's just one of my favorite songs. Like, it's just funny to me, you know, you can barely understand what's being said, but it's just it's so good. It really is like production value for me though. You know, like I know a lot of like early death metal, it was, you know, production values weren't always there, but the production is definitely on this album, and Bloodthirst it's just so brutal. He's like, blood. I don't know. It's great.
I love death metal, and I love it because, you know, I don't personally see it as being there to be taken too seriously. I see it there as like, it is fun, it's got energy, and I do love the modern production elements, making it a lot more palatable just to listen to. You know, if you are listening and you've got Spotify going and you're out headphones on and something comes on, like for example, ever since like Behemoth and the Satanist, for me, like that kind of really, you know, it sticks, you can listen to it, but it is also still fun, still aggressive, still brutal, and I love it. Yeah, it's brilliant. So that was Cannibal Corpse with Bloodthirst. And before we let you go for this week, we've got another track from Spit. So I think this show has been, you know, we can pocket this and say this has been a very 2000s, late 90s sort of show. I think all the tracks you've chosen was around from that time. We're leaving with Do You Think I'm a Whore? And tell us why that track.
You know, it's funny. I remember sort of recently going through a lot of different songs to, you know, include in potential set lists for some of these like festivals that we were doing, and Mercedes was like, man, that song Do You Think I'm a Whore is like the dark horse of that album. It's so heavy. I think that there's just elements of that transcend you know, some of the other tracks on the album, and it's like one of the bangers of Spit. I know people would argue and say that there are many, and yes, that's true. But I know it's definitely a fan favorite. It wasn't a single, but a lot of people still listen to it, and it's just got a really great groove to it. I think, you know, I agree with Mercedes. It's the dark horse of the album. It's got it all.
Let's have a listen now, and we'll see you next week.
For sure.
Primordial Radio, it's Adam here, but you're not listening in for me. You're listening in for my guest, Morgan from Kittie. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks. How are you?
I am very, very, very good. It's a very exciting week, obviously. This is the week that your brand new album, Fire, is coming out. For Kittie fans worldwide, it's an exciting week because it's the first time they're going to hear, you know, a new Kittie album in 13 years. We'll chat about that in a minute. First, we're going to play something from In the Black, which was back in 2009. This is Forgive and Forget. Forgive and Forget from Kittie. Tell us a little bit about that track.
Oh gosh. I feel like Forgive and Forget is like kind of absurd, and it was written to be absurd. You know, a lot of the songs that we included on In the Black were sort of meant to be over the top and sort of the complete antithesis to the previous album that we had put out. I think we felt, you know, with the previous album, Funeral for Yesterday, that, you know, we felt like there were a lot of constraints, and the album didn't really turn out the way that we'd hoped. And so we felt with In the Black, we were righting all of the wrongs, with like going over the top with, really fast songs, and Forgive and Forget in particular, like there's like 2 solo breaks in it. And we were just like, let's do all of the things. And it's such a banger. It's one of my favorite tracks that we've ever written, and one of my favorite tracks on that album.
So let's talk about the new album now. You're saying then, that album, you had absurd stuff and things like, are there any surprises in the new album? People have heard, there's 4 singles out so far. So we've got One Foot in the Grave, Vultures, We Are Shadows, and Eyes Wide Open. Is that what people can expect? And also, as a secondary question to that, like, how excited are you for people to start listening? Like, it must just be, I don't know, is there a fear? Like, it's your baby and it's out in the open? Or is it more like you just can't wait for people to hear it?
I think that there's a little bit of fear for sure. Even going into the writing of the album, we're like, well, I hope people like it. There's always like a little bit of the fear of the anticipation, and just hoping that your fans resonate with the music and all the hard work that you've put into it. So I try not to have too huge expectations, but so far the response with all of the releases is like all the singles has been incredible. And I think with the variety that each single has sort of brought to the table, like people can expect a lot of different stuff on this album. I think it encompasses a lot of the different elements that we put into Kittie. Sometimes like we have songs that are all just heavy and screaming, and sometimes we've got melody, and I think people can expect that a little bit of everything, even hearkening to the past, will be included in this album. So
I mean, I've been lucky enough to hear the album, and it's all tied together by massive riffs and fantastic guitars, which very much excites me. You sat there with a good lot of guitars behind you. How has guitar playing changed for you since you got started? And I say that as this is almost like a personal question for me to ask, because I've got guitars behind me and everything, but it started off for me, it was an obsession, and now it's just something that I do occasionally. Obviously for you it's a tool of business, which makes it sound really
yes,
sucks the fun out of it. I don't mean to do that, but yeah, how has guitar playing changed for you over the years?
Oh gosh, well, I mean, I certainly can admit and say that like when I started out playing guitar, I don't think I was very good at it. We were sort of making do as teenagers and in our early days of Kittie. But there was a lot of passion and fire behind the desire to want to play, and I think over the years I've become a very competent player. I can't say that I like grab my guitar every single day and shred for hours and hours and hours. I don't think I've ever been obsessed with guitar, but it's certainly changed as in now, like I feel as I've gotten older and I've been playing for so long, and Kittie is so ingrained in my personality. It's sort of like an extension of myself. Sometimes I am doing something and I'm like, oh, I feel the need to let it out, and it's sort of like an extension of my emotional barometer, I guess. Sometimes if you're feeling angry, just picking up a guitar and just riffing can help to get that out. But yeah, like I mean, it's changed. Obviously for the better. And I think I'm a decent rhythm player. I'll say that.
It upsets me that if you're only decent, then I have no idea where I'd be falling in there. And actually, since 13 years between albums, lots have changed in the guitar world, and it's I know probably it's more for the consumer market when you look at like what's available and things, but amp modelers, Kempers and all of that. When you got in the studio, was it guitar, threw some pedals straight to a triple rectifier, or were you trying new things that you hadn't done before or hadn't used before?
No, I mean, live, we definitely have gone the like modeler route because it's just so much easier. Like this old trusty guy here, we used to like actually carry up like sets of stairs and things like that. And my back just is not into that anymore. So for live stuff, definitely, we've gone a little bit more on the scaling down route. But in the studio, I think it's really important to capture the biggest sound possible. And regardless of, and like, we're a little old school, and Nick Rasculinex is also very old school as well. The producer who worked on Fire with us. And so, getting in there and, big stacks of amps and whatnot in a padded room all mic'd up, that's how we did it. So we went old school and cranked the volume up and got those tones that way. So, obviously mixed with modern technology of everything going into a Pro Tools rig, but we're still kicking it old school with big authentic amp sounds.
You got to start by moving some air, haven't you? And I mean, not a user of, at the time, I'd say traditionally authentic amps. Dimebag Darrell, guitar player of Pantera, you picked 5 Minutes Alone. Tell us, there's a lot of good Pantera you could have picked. Why have you gone for this one? Not to say this one isn't good. I like this track very much.
It's such a hard decision. You can't just pick one Pantera song. Unfortunately, I had to. So I did. I don't know. It's just like one of their classics. Like Far Beyond Driven as an album is like, it's like the perfect album. Yeah. And like, I know, when it came out, it was like, it smashed records of like, I think it didn't go to number 1 on Billboard and stuff. It's like, just like,
it's just crazy to think of it. Like,
I know, it's just unbelievable. I was privileged enough to have done some touring with Pantera with Dime and Vinny, back in 2000 for the Ozfest that we were on. And I got to see them play every single night. And it was an incredible experience. Everyone in the band was amazing, and I don't know, they're just one of those bands that's like, so like, they're just so good at what they're so good at what they did that it seems like it was out of reach, but at the same time they were so down to earth that it was amazing that they were even human, you know what I mean? Yeah, 5 Minutes Alone, it's an amazing song. The groove on it it's like, all Pantera riffs are riffs that I wish that I could write. And, 5 Minutes Alone is no different. It's just like the perfect song. And that's why I picked it. I want a headbang,
All guitar conversations eventually lead to Dimebag Darrell.
It's true.
This is Pantera, 5 Minutes Alone. Nothingface and Goldtooth. I've never heard of Nothingface, actually. So you're going to have to educate me and tell me a little bit about this track.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, Nothingface, I'm not even sure where are they from. They were sort of like a 90s, I want to say their first album kind of like leaned very nu metal, and they got lumped into like the nu metal category. But they were a bit more of an independent band. They were on like D-side records for a really long time, like in the early 90s. Their first album, Pacifier, I discovered in the mid 90s by watching like a late night metal show in Canada and being like, ooh, what is this spooky stuff? But the second album that they put out, which is called an Everyday Guide to Audio Atrocity, or an audio guide to everyday atrocity. Sorry, that was a little dyslexia.
Either one
there.
Actually works really
well.
Yeah.
An audio guide to everyday atrocity is, I think it's a masterpiece. I think a lot of the guitar playing and the riffs, it transcends nu metal. It's, to me, not nu metal at all. The guitarist Tom Maxwell, actually, I believe he was in Hell Yeah, as after the fact. So kind of going back to the Pantera connection there. But he just has this like guitar style that is all his own. And the album in general, when it came out, I remember just being blown away. They're super heavy, super aggressive. I always hate saying nu metal leaning because it doesn't really feel nu metal, but I guess you could lump it into that category. But yeah, like it's just the whole album is just incredible.
So you guys get put in the new metal category, but also I see a lot online, descriptions of groove metal, which is what I would probably consider it. For me, it's just metal, because it kind of crosses a lot of areas. Like, are you comfortable having a label? Do you like having a label, or would you rather just, people just listen to it and make their own judgments on what you are?
Well, I mean, I definitely think, we're a metal band. I think there's a lot of different subgenres. The groove metal thing is like a newer thing that I have seen come up lately, and I find that to be really interesting. I mean, it's cool that we're groovy. I think a lot of that probably stems from the fact that like we've never been known for like doing really fast and shreddy songs. Like, we're a little bit more of that like mid-tempo kind of thing going on, and so I think that's where the groove part comes in. But I mean, I would just be I'm happy just for people to say we're a metal band and call it a day.
It makes life easier, in my opinion, but no one really minds about my opinion, so that's fine. Moving on to another band who we played earlier on in the sets of shows, and probably more difficult to define, Katatonia again, with My Twin. Tell us a little bit about this track.
Well, again, sort of my choice of Katatonia is based on feelings that I had during a certain time in my life. And Katatonia was just very, very comforting to me at a difficult time in my life. And the song and like its lyrical content and its meaning, I think really resonated with me and sort of what I was going through at the time. It's like, you used to be like my twin type thing, about loss and things like that. And it's just a beautiful song. Like, again, they are one of those bands that are so good at being vulnerable and emotional, and I just love a good emotional song. Here I am revealing all to you.
Let's have a listen now, and if anyone does get emotional, that's okay. It's Katatonia. It's My Twin. We're coming up to the ultimate sound check song, I think. This seems to be a sound engineer's absolute favourite, Deftones and My Own Summer. Unfortunately, I tended to work with folkier and bluesier bands at the time, so it didn't really do me any good to get their snares sounding quite like that. But how I would have loved to have got their snares sounding like that. You've spoken fondly of Deftones so far over the radio residencies. Tell us a little bit about why this is the track you've gone for.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Deftones are so influential. They certainly influenced Kittie early in the early days, and continue to transcend genres even as a band. And I think it's so remarkable, how they've continued to, every album is just amazing. I chose My Own Summer though because I feel like that that riff is just, it's so iconic. I remember when that song dropped, being like, it's like the riff is like poetry. It says something, and it really speaks to me. I discovered the Deftones early on, their first album. I remember, again, late night watching late night metal shows and Much Music, and being like, what is this? I think it was like 7 words or whatever. Being like, this is insane. This is incredible. What is this? And then, you have to go on your dial-up computer to like search for it. But yeah, My Own Summer is just like such a cool video, such a great song. I got to see them on that tour that they did for the release of that album, and just fond memories of being young and like having your mind blown by a riff. You know what I mean?
It must have been more fun back then to be more invested in the search and discovery, trying to find what is this, and then spending time and effort, and then eventually, you might buy an album and then you've parted with something. Whereas nowadays, Shazam, Spotify, follow, and you sometimes you don't even remember that you've done it, and and then the moment's gone.
Yeah, it's really it was a really rewarding thing to do, to search, really, to find music, and to find music that was sort of like something else, if you really needed that fix. The early days of the internet were certainly not easy for that. I mean, people would buy albums based on an album cover and be like, this looks cool, maybe. I don't know what's inside, but we'll find out.
Let's have a listen to Deftones. This is My Own Summer. That is The Gathering with Roller Coaster. Tell us a little bit about The Gathering.
So I chose the song again. It's like one of those nostalgic songs. That was another album, a track from an album that I was listening to during that same time period where I was listening to A Perfect Circle, Mare de Nom, and I don't know. It's just there's so much nostalgia and in the songs, and her vocals are just amazing. I don't know. I think The Gathering is one of those bands that they had a little something. I don't know. Like, I assume that they still make music. But like, definitely in the 90s, they had a thing, and it's very European, but,
they are
I
Dutch.
think that, yeah. Just like but I don't know if they ever got huge in, America, in North America or whatever. I'm pretty sure that I found them through like a CD sampler. And just discovered how beautiful and mesmerizing the music is. So
their last album was out on April 29th, 2022. It was their 11th studio album. Beautiful Distortion, but it was their first in nearly 10 years.
Oh.
So there you go. And,
hey, something in common.
Well, definitely something in common, because in just 2 days' time, your first album in 13 years is coming out. And we're going to play a track from it now, Vultures. Tell us about this track, Vultures. This is the big time for the Primordial listeners to go and pre-like, save, purchase, order vinyl, t-shirts, everything. So sell it all with Vultures. Oh,
yeah. Well, Vultures is like one of those songs that I think encompasses everything that Kittie is about. It's heavy, very riffy, screaming, big chorus. I think it's really got like a very groovy vibe, and maybe like a song like that is like, yeah, sure, we're groove metal. Makes sense. But scathing lyrics, it's got it all. Everything that you could ask for in a metal song. I think it's the energy and everything is sort of like, it's like a great representation of everything that you can expect from our new album.
The new album is out on Friday. Where's the best place for people to pick it up?
Oh, well, obviously you can stream some of the singles and whatnot. Sumerian Records will have pre-order stuff. We've got bundles, we've got CDs. And so if you're more of a tangible person, I think that the Sumerian Records web store will be the best place to go for limited edition vinyl, and like I mentioned, like bundles with like t-shirts and things like that. So it's a good place to hit up.
Go there now. And before that, though, let's have a listen to some Kittie. We'll see you next week, Morgan. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
It's Adam, and it is the radio residency here on Primordial, and I'm joined for the fourth and final time, sadly. Not sad that you're joining us, sad that it's the final time.
Maybe Morgan. To some.
No, do not say that. It is Morgan from the band Kittie. How are you?
I'm doing so well. How are you?
I am doing very, very well as well. And just in case people have missed the last few weeks, you've got a brand new album out right now. It's called Fire. It's the first album out in 13 years. It's been out since Friday. But the first track of the radio residency, we're skipping all the way back to 2001 and the album Oracle. This is Mouthful of Poison. Mouthful of Poison by Kittie. Tell us a little bit about that track.
All right. Well, I feel like Mouthful of Poison is like a standout track from our second album. We were trying to be so angry and so metal on our second release. And I think Mouthful of Poison is like the perfect example of everything that we wanted to achieve with Oracle. It still holds up so well live as well. It's such a fun song to play. And that sort of breakdown at the end there is like a good opportunity for people to work their neck out a bit. It's still one of my favorite songs to play live. So, I'm wanted to showcase it.
People always say the difficult second album. Like, was there I firstly don't know if that saying was still prevalent back in 2001, or if it's something that's just sort of come about more and more nowadays. But was there a thought of, okay, now we can do this, and having to kind of live up almost to your own expectations of, we can do this, we have done it? Or was it just natural getting back in the studio?
I think, I mean, it was natural to go back in the studio, but you are not wrong in sort of mentioning that a second album for any band is usually sort of like a difficult opportunity. It's a difficult thing. I've heard people say, oh, you have your entire musical career to write your first album, and then you only have like, depending on, what the situation is, like 9 months, a year to write the second. And there's a lot riding on that. And especially after, you've probably been out on the road for at least a year and that sort of thing. So it was hard for us. There was a lot of transition that was happening behind the scenes as well with Oracle. But I think we wrote the album that we wanted to write to represent who we were at the time. And a lot of the focus on us in the first album was that we're women and that we were young, the new metal thing. And I think we sort of were moving away from that. It was important to me in particular to prove that we were a metal band, that we had staying power, and that we weren't just a cliche or a flash in the pan and the new metal thing and that as well. So a lot of those songs it's very different. It certainly wasn't easy, but I think the album resonates with a lot of people. I think a lot of people really love it because it is a little different.
And how have you seen, I struggle asking these questions because I'm sort of white male, like there's no way of getting around it. But has the industry improved since, back in the early 2000s with the whole thing of, a female band? Because it doesn't matter. Like, to me, and I know to a lot of people, it's music. Mm-hmm. Who's playing it isn't ever a thing that should matter. Obviously, there are some people who draw attention to it negatively. Has that improved, would you say, going from second album to the latest album?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think representation certainly matters. And, in the time since our first couple of albums, like there has been a lot more women fronting bands, women playing, instruments, a lot more just all female bands in general. And so like the more that people see and understand and see that representation, the easier that it's going to get. Just for us, it was just sort of at a time when, there wasn't a lot of that. And so much focus was put on our gender and our age and whatnot. But I mean, mind you, that was sort of the time of like, the macho new metal, like Limp Bizkit break stuff kind of thing, and Woodstock 99 and all of all that kind of stuff that was going on. There was like a general vibe going on with music and whatnot, and so yeah, there was a big focus on that. But I think it's certainly improved. There's always work that's still left to be done, and we and all women that are representing in heavy metal and hard rock are continuing to just do our thing and make it an even playing field.
And final question on it. Did it come as a shock at first? Because obviously you've listened to metal, you like metal, you've picked up a guitar, you like playing the guitar, you've got in a room with your friends and started playing music and you like it and you decide to go and record it. And then suddenly, people are adding this other angle that probably didn't feature in your mind at all during that process.
No, the magnitude of the things that we were doing did not, like, it was not something that we thought about. Like when we were forming a band, when we were teenagers, we weren't like, well, let's form an all-female band because this is gonna, do this for us, or this is gonna mean this. It was like our friends were also musicians, happened to be girls, and we got into a room together to play. The gravity of the meaning behind being an all-female band, and how defiant something like that can be in the face of social norms and that sort of thing. Like none of those things were in our minds at all, especially, you know, being like 14 and 15 years old. You know, we just, like, it was very innocent. We just wanted to have fun and emulate our idols and just learn together and have a great time. And, you know, obviously we didn't realize how important us doing what we were doing was to a lot of people and in general.
And obviously the next band up, you know, I'm sure there'd be an influence on bands like Jinjer. Jinjer, one of the most revered vocalists in the industry right now,
so
Tatiana.
She's
Yes.
so fucking good. oh, yeah. Like for the last few choices of my tracks, I wanted to highlight some women that I thought just they're representing amazingly well in the industry, have incredible voices. Yeah, I just wanted to play some badass ladies for these last few. But yeah, Tatiana is amazing. Her voice is just incredible. I got to see them at Sick New World. Was it Sick New World? A few months ago, and live, like, just incredible. I heard, like, the things that she does with her voice are amazing. I've heard a rumor that she is a Kittie fan. And she's done something similar like this and played a few Kittie tracks, being like, oh, this was an influential thing on me. So I'm repaying the favor and showing her some love.
Brilliant. This is Jinjer with Call Me a Cynic. Spiritbox with Holy Roller. I've strangely, a really odd way to start this link, but I've got a friend called Swavek who is very intrinsic. He loves metal, but he loves... he watches someone on YouTube who analyzes how the vocalist's vocal cords work.
Okay.
And he talks about Jinjer and Spiritbox and how that, you know, they're almost like medical marvels. And actually, I guess you probably have that as well. Like there's something that a metal vocalist's vocal cords can do, which is a little bit unique.
Interesting.
You know, have you ever had any of that analyzed on yourself?
You know what? No, like, I've been to ear, nose, and throat specialists to, like, check early on in our career, to, like, check to make sure, like, I wasn't doing any damage to my vocal cords, you know, the whole nodes thing and all that stuff. But I've never actually gone to someone to, like, take a look and be like, is this why you can scream metal or not? But I would be very interested to know, because, yeah, like, I know that it's something that, especially for women, like, getting such a low resonance with your voice it can be difficult, and there's a lot of different places where you can place that power, you know, to get high or low or whatever. I would be really curious to know if I fall into that category.
I mean, there's a YouTuber somewhere. Sadly, I can't give any more information on that, but you should definitely have a Google and
I'm gonna take a look for sure.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about Spiritbox and Holy Roller.
I don't know. Again, like, we're talking about amazing vocalists, amazing women, also Canadian people. Woo woo. Spiritbox has literally taken over the metal world, and I am here for it. I love the dynamics of Courtney's voice. I love the dynamics of the music. I think they have a lot of, like, dark and light play that I find really, really interesting. And they just write great fucking songs. They write bangers. And yeah, like, showcasing amazing women fronting bands is what I want to do for the rest of this episode. So I wanted to showcase this song because, like, she's got some really scary screams in Holy Roller. So love it.
And the next voice as well is Chelsea Wolfe. Another reappearance here on the Radio Residency. This is Ancestors and the Ancients. Tell us a little bit about this track. Is there anything vocally that people should look out for?
Well, she definitely doesn't do any death metal screams in this song, but again, like, Pain is Beauty is such an important album for me. I love it, and this song just has, like, a really kind of groovy vibe to it. I love the treatment of her voice as well, like the effects that they put on it. Yeah, the whole album in general, like, I love it. And Chelsea Wolfe is, like, a magical witch, and she's incredible.
Another artist that I've got to put on my special list of artists to really delve into. This is Chelsea Wolfe with Ancestors, the Ancients. That was Chelsea Wolfe. We've only got a couple of minutes left on the Radio Residency. We've still got some good music to play. Next up is Entheos and I Am the Void. Another band new to me. Tell me a little bit about these guys and about the track.
Okay, well, Entheos is brutal. I recommend listening to their latest album. Their singer is another incredible woman with a voice that I don't even know how she does what she does. She's like it's one of the scariest metal screams that I've ever heard. Her name is Channy Crab, and again, I just wanted to showcase some women that are killing it in the metal world. I would say they're a bit more, death metal leaning, I would say. Tech death, I think, is sort of what you would describe it as. But like her voice is just so incredible. I really recommend people checking out Entheos and giving it a spin. I just here to represent the ladies.
One of the scariest metal screams. I think that was the term you just used then. That certainly sold it to me. This is Entheos, I Am the Void. Nothingface with Villains. Played some Nothingface earlier on. You introduced them to me. What particularly about this track, Villains?
I don't know. It's just got such a great vibe. I think in general that the second Nothingface album really, really influenced Kittie back in the early days. And of course, spanning all of the different influences over these last 4 episodes, all of the stuff that I love, the things that have sort of gone into making me who I am and resonating with me, I felt it important to showcase another track from an audio guide to Everyday Atrocity, and one of my favorites. So
still one of the best album names. Still one of the best album names I've heard today, at the very least. And another fantastic album, just to mention before you head off, is Fire. It's the brand new Kittie album. It is out now. Very, very exciting. I'm going to play a track from it just before you leave. But before that, what's coming next? Tours, gigs? Are you going to be over in Europe anytime soon?
Oh, we you know what? We would love to make Europe happen. I know it's definitely in the cards. It's just a case of planning. Once the album is released, obviously it's out. We're going to have some headlining stuff going on in the States and Canada for just a few select dates, and hope to be over in Europe sometime next year. It's a super important for us to make sure that we're covering all the bases, and I hope that everyone enjoys the album and will be able to sing along with us when we get there.
We're going to finish with a track from the brand new album. This is We Are Shadows. Morgan, thank you so much for joining us here on Primordial Radio. It has been brilliant, and I hope everyone is loving the album as much as I am.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been awesome.
Primordial Radio.